I'm David Pawson. I've been preaching for 60 years, and I'm going to go on doing that till the end comes. But I've promised the Lord I'll go on preaching while He gives me breath. Now then, I'm going to talk about one of the many books I've written, because in addition to being a Bible teacher, I'm what's called a Christian Zionist. And way back from the middle of 1963, the war in Israel, I was out there in the war, up on the Golan Heights with bullets flying. And I thought, what is happening here? And I asked an army major, how on earth did you ever get up into the Golan Heights with all the Russian guns pointing down at you from the top? And he didn't say a word. He just lifted a finger and pointed to the sky. It was his way of saying, God was with us. And it was from that year that I began to take an interest in Israel today. And the fact that they've come back to their promised land after 2,000 years of being away from it. And they've been without their own language, their own army, their own money, their own everything. And yet they're back in their own land with their own language. It's got to be of God. It was the only time in the United Nations that America and Russia voted the same way for the state of Israel to be recognized by the United Nations. Amazing. Well, that's a whole story, and I've said much about it. And ever since I've been involved with the people of Israel, not just those who've gone back to the land, but Jews everywhere. Half of them are still elsewhere in your country, America. A lot of them are still here. So I'm known as a Christian Zionist, but that is an extremely unpopular position in Britain. And most of the church leaders in Britain criticize very heavily those of us who are supportive of Israel. And one of their criticisms is that we're stuck in the Old Testament, that we're always quoting Old Testament texts, that the New Testament has left Israel behind. And this is what we call replacement theology, the idea that the church is now God's chosen people on earth and Israel has been left behind. Their fault for not recognizing the Son of God when He came, but nevertheless, that is the theory, that the church has replaced Israel. There are some Jews in the church, but only a minority. But the church is now the new Israel. Well, I've been spending the last 7 years speaking in Jerusalem on one topic, Israel in the New Testament. And that's been a surprise to many, that there's so much in the New Testament, in the New Covenant, as it were, that relates to God's people, Israel, the Jews. And so I went through year by year in Jerusalem at the annual Feast of Tabernacles, books of the New Testament to show what they said about Israel. And we went through Matthew, Acts, Romans, Hebrews, and Revelation. Now I've put all those talks together in this book, Israel in the New Testament, rewritten bits of it and brought some of it up to date, but it's essentially those talks that I gave to show that believing God has a future purpose for Israel today is part of the Christian scriptures, the New Testament. Yes, what's happening to Israel is fulfilling many predictions of the Old Testament, but it's part of the solid teaching of the New Testament that we have to look forward to. There are unfulfilled prophecies in both the Old and the New Testament, which God must fulfill. Do you know that in your Bible, there are altogether 735 predictions about the future? The Bible is packed with. Of those 735, 596 have already come true. Literally word for word true. It doesn't take much faith to believe that the rest are going to come true as well, mainly because God is a God who keeps his word and keeps his promises, and has made promises to Israel in both parts of our Bible. So Israel in the New Testament, if you had ever begun to think that because the church is now around that Israel is forgotten and that God has switched his purpose and his affection to a new people, then this is the book you need to read.